My wife cheated on me for 8 months with her coworker. When my trip got canceled, I found her acting strange. I tracked her phone and caught them at a hotel, but my response left everyone speechless. I'm 34 years old, work in it, consulting, and what happened about 6 months ago still has me processing everything, you know. Like when something so big happens that your brain needs time to really understand it. I was married for almost 10 years to Kimberly, and for most of that time, I thought we had something solid. Not perfect, obviously, because no marriage is, but solid. We met when I was 24 and she was 23, at one of those boring parties with friends of friends where I normally would have left after an hour, but something about her made me stay. She was pretty, yeah, but more than that, she was smart and funny, and we had this kind of chemistry where we could talk about anything for hours. We got married 2 years later in a small wedding, because neither of us wanted anything too big, just close family and friends, and I remember thinking that day that I'd made the right choice, that this was the person I was going to grow old with. The first few years were good. Honestly, we lived in a small apartment while we saved for a house. We both worked hard but always found time for us, like movie nights or going out to dinner on Fridays. When we bought the house about 5 years ago, a modest place in a quiet suburban neighborhood, I felt like we were building something real together. Kimberly worked in human resources for a marketing company, normal office hours, and I traveled occasionally for work, but nothing extreme, maximum once or twice a month. We had our routines, our friends, our little traditions like going to breakfast on Sundays at this place we loved. I don't know, I guess I had settled into that feeling of stability, you know? That thing where you think you know someone so well that they could never surprise you. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier, but when you're in the middle of your daily life, it's easy to miss the small changes. About a year ago, maybe a little more, Kimberly started staying late at the office more often. At first, I didn't. I think anything weird. She told me they had a big project, or that her boss was a mess at organizing things and she had to compensate. I believed her because I'd never had reasons not to believe her. And besides, I also had my crazy work weeks. But then it started being more frequent. Like 2 or 3 times a week, she'd get home past 8 or 9 at night before she left at 5:30 religiously. I also noticed she was on her phone more, but again, I thought it was for work or that group of girlfriends she had who were always organizing outings or sharing memes. You know when something feels a little weird but not weird enough to make a scene? It was that. The thing is, in February of this year, I had a work trip planned to Chicago. It was going to be Wednesday to Friday, just 3 days. Kimberly didn't even seem very affected when I reminded her. Tuesday night, she just said something like, "Okay, drive safe," and kept looking at her phone. Wednesday morning I got up early, like 5:30, because my flight left at 9, and traffic to the airport is always horrible. Kimberly was still asleep when I left. I kissed her forehead and left. Everything normal up to that point. Turns out when I got to the airport around 7:30, I got an email from my client saying there was a family emergency and they needed to cancel all meetings for that week. Could we reschedule for next week? Obviously, I said yes, no problem, and canceled my flight right there. It was like 8 in the morning and I thought, well, I'm gonna surprise Kimberly. I'll get home before she leaves for work and we can have breakfast together or something. I was feeling kind of romantic, honestly, like what a nice surprise I'm going to give her. I drove back home and got there around 8:45. I parked my car in the driveway and noticed Kimberly's car wasn't there, which was weird because she normally left between 9 and 9:30. I thought maybe she'd had to get in early for some meeting or something, didn't give it much importance. I went into the house and everything was normal. The bed was made. Kimberly was obsessive about that. Her coffee mug was in the sink. I took off my shoes, put my suitcase in the room, and decided to go out to run some errands since I had the day off unexpectedly. I went to the bank first, then I needed gas, so I stopped at the gas station that's about 10 minutes from the house. And that's when I saw it. I was filling the tank, staring into space like you do when you're waiting for it to finish, and I see a car that looks familiar pass by on the street. A gray Honda Accord, same model and color as Kimberly's, even had a small Yankees logo sticker on the back window just like hers. But it passed quickly and I thought, nah, must be another similar car. There are thousands of gray Accords around here. I finished filling up and decided to stop by the grocery store that's near there, because we needed some things for the house. I'm walking down the cereal aisle when I see Kimberly entering the grocery store at full speed, like almost running, wearing her work clothes. She looked, I don't know how to describe it, like agitated or nervous. She grabbed a cart and started throwing things in like she had 5 minutes to do a month's worth of shopping. I just stood there in the aisle not knowing what to do, feeling something weird in my stomach. Something didn't add up. She was supposed to be at work, right? Why was she here running through the grocery store at 9:30 in the morning on a workday? I decided not to approach her. I don't know why. I just stayed observing her from afar. I watched her grab a bunch of random things, like she was buying just to buy, milk, bread, things we already had at home. She paid super fast, didn't even check the receipt, and left almost running. I followed her, keeping my distance, and watched her get in her car and leave the parking lot driving faster than normal. At that moment, something in my head clicked, but I still didn't want to believe it. You know? I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe she'd left work early for some reason, or maybe she had a doctor's appointment she'd forgotten to mention. I got home about half an hour later, and Kimberly's car was in the driveway. I went in and she was in the kitchen, putting away the groceries, still dressed in her office clothes. She saw me come in and almost dropped the milk bottle she had in her hand. Her face, I can't even describe it. It was like a mix of shock and panic, and then she tried to compose herself and smile. She said, "What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be in Chicago?" And I explained about the canceled meetings. She said, "Oh, bad luck. Well, at least we have the weekend together," or something like that. Like trying to sound normal, but her voice was weird. I asked her why she wasn't at work, and she said she'd taken the day off because she didn't feel well in the morning, that she thought it was better to stay home. I asked her why she was at the grocery store, then if she was sick, and she got defensive, said she'd felt better and we needed things. Technically, everything she was saying could make sense, but something inside me knew she was lying. There was something in the way she avoided my gaze, in how her hands were shaking a little while she put things away. The next few days were strange. Kimberly was acting different, like more attentive than normal, asking me how I was, what I wanted for dinner, if I needed anything. It was like she was overcompensating for something. And her phone, God, her phone became like an extension of her body. She took it everywhere, even to the bathroom, and it was always face down. Before she left it lying around carelessly, but now she even slept with it under her pillow. One night, I tried to grab it to check the time because my phone was charging in the living room, and she practically jumped out of bed to take it from me, saying, "Use your phone, this one's mine." Weird, very weird. She also started staying late at the office again, but now more frequently. Like she'd get home at 9 or 10 at night saying they had an audit or they were reorganizing the whole department. I nodded and pretended to believe her, but inside I felt this thing growing, this suspicion I didn't want to name because naming it would make it real. About 2 weeks after the grocery store incident, on a Tuesday, I think, Kimberly told me she was going to work late again. She said she had an important meeting with some clients or something. I said okay, didn't even argue. When she left around 7 at night, I sat in the living room thinking about what to do. The voice in my head, the one I'd been ignoring, was screaming so loud I couldn't pretend not to hear it anymore. I waited about an hour and then took my car and drove to her office. And her company was in a corporate building about 20 minutes from the house. In that area where there are a bunch of companies and everything looks the same. I got to the parking lot and circled around looking for her car. It wasn't there. I went around like 3 complete times, checked every section of the parking lot thinking maybe she'd parked it in a different spot. Nothing. Her car wasn't there. I called her cell and it went straight to voicemail. I sent her a message asking how things were going at work and she didn't respond. I sat there in my car in that empty parking lot, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. All the pieces started coming together in my head, like those moments in movies when the detective finally understands everything. The late arrivals, the phone, the lie about the day I came back early, everything. But I still needed proof, you know? I needed to be sure before doing anything, because accusing someone of infidelity without proof is something you can't take back. I went home and waited. Kimberly got home around 11. At night, she looked tired, but not like she'd been working. More like she'd been, I don't know, living another life. She asked me how my day was, and I said, "Good, boring, the usual." She went to shower and then got in bed. I stayed awake until like 2 in the morning thinking about what to do. The next few days, I became someone I never thought I'd be, basically an obsessed amateur detective. I started paying attention to everything, to the patterns. Kimberly stayed late on Tuesdays and Thursdays mainly, sometimes Wednesdays. She left the house saying she was going to the gym on Saturday mornings, but came back like 3 hours later without looking at all like she'd exercised. Her text messages sounded different, shorter, more defensive. She'd created this distance between us that hadn't been there before, or maybe it had always been there, and I hadn't noticed. On a Thursday, about 3 weeks after all this, Kimberly told me she was going to stay late again. I said okay, and when she left, I waited half an hour and then followed her. Yeah, I know. It sounds horrible and obsessive and probably wasn't the healthiest way to handle things, but at that moment, I felt like I had no other choice. I needed to know the truth even if it destroyed me. I followed her, keeping my distance. She had no idea I was behind her. Instead of going toward her office, she drove toward a neighborhood I didn't know, about 30 minutes from our house. They were nice houses, like upper middle class, with well-kept yards and expensive cars in the driveways. Kimberly parked in front of a 2-story house with a black Jeep in the driveway. She got out of her car, checked her phone, fixed her hair in the rearview mirror, and walked toward the front door. She didn't even knock, just walked in like it was her house. I parked about 4 houses down where I could see, but it wasn't obvious. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Knock on the door, whether I should leave, whether I should take pictures. I decided to wait and see what happened. About an hour later, the door opened and I saw Kimberly come out with a guy. He was tall, like 6 feet something, well-dressed in jeans and a casual shirt, dark hair. They were laughing about something, and then he pulled her toward him and kissed her. It wasn't a quick friend's kiss. It was a couple's kiss, deep and long. I felt like I'd been emptied out inside, like my whole body was just an empty shell. I took pictures with my phone, my hands shaking so much I don't know how they came out focused. After the kiss, Kimberly got in her car and left. The guy stayed at the door, watching her leave with this stupid smile on his face. I stayed there for like 10 more minutes, trying to process what I'd just seen, feeling like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Eventually, I drove home, got there before Kimberly, and acted like nothing had happened when she got home. Around 11, she smelled different. Not her normal perfume, but something else, men's cologne probably. She told me it had been a long night at the office and went straight to shower. I sat in the living room feeling completely paralyzed, not knowing how to confront her or what to say. I repeated this like 3 more times over the next 2 weeks, following her on different days to confirm it wasn't a coincidence or a mistake or something that could be explained some other way. But no, it was always the same. She'd say she was going to work late or had to run errands, and she'd end up at that house with that guy. Sometimes she'd stay 2 hours, sometimes 3. Once I saw them leave together and get in his car to go to a restaurant, acting like a normal couple on a normal date. I did some research and found out the guy's name was Steven, and he worked at the same company as Kimberly, in the finance department or something. He was like 32, divorced, no kids. Basically, I'd built a complete profile of this dude without even talking to him. Part of me wanted to go to his house and punch him, but the rational part knew that wouldn't solve anything, and I'd probably end up arrested. During all this time, I acted completely normal with Kimberly. We talked about everyday things, watched shows together, slept in the same bed. It was surreal, like living 2 realities at the same time. In one, I was the normal husband who didn't know anything, and in the other, I was the betrayed husband who knew everything but was waiting for the right moment to act. I finally decided it was enough. I had all the evidence I needed. Photos, dates, places. There was no point in prolonging this anymore. On a Saturday morning, Kimberly was in the kitchen making coffee when I told her we needed to talk. She looked at me with that, "About what?" face, completely innocent. We sat in the living room and I took out my phone and showed her the pictures, one by one, without saying anything at first. Her face went through like 1,000 different expressions in 10 seconds. First confusion, then recognition, then panic. Then she tried to justify herself. She started talking super fast, saying she could explain, that it wasn't what it looked like, that I didn't understand. I just sat there listening to her make up increasingly ridiculous excuses until I finally asked her directly, "Are you having an affair with Stephen from your work?" And the silence that followed gave me all the answer I needed. Then came the tears. Kimberly started crying, saying she was so sorry, that it had been a huge mistake, that she didn't know how it had happened. She said it started about 8 months ago. 8 months. Can you believe it? That Stephen had been kind to her at a time when she felt lonely, because I traveled a lot, basically blaming me for her decision to cheat on me. She said she knew it was wrong but didn't know how to stop, that she'd tried to end it with him several times but kept going back. It was all lie after excuse after excuse. I asked her if she loved him, and she hesitated before answering, which was answer enough. She said she didn't know, that she was confused, that she loved me but also felt something for him. At that moment, I felt so much rage and sadness. At the same time, I thought I was going to explode. I told her I knew exactly where she'd been every time she said she was working late, every time she went to the gym, every time she made up an excuse. I showed her the dates I documented, the times, everything. She stayed quiet because there was nothing she could say to defend herself. Then came the part where she started begging. That please don't leave her. That we could go to couples therapy. That she'd end it with Stephen immediately and change jobs if necessary. That I was the love of her life, and this had just been a stupid mistake. She took my hands and begged me to give her another chance. That 10 years of marriage couldn't end like this. And I just looked at her thinking, this person in front of me, do I really know her? Did I ever know her? I told her no. Simply no. I wasn't going to go to therapy. I wasn't going to try to save this. I wasn't going to pretend I could forgive 8 months of lies and betrayal. I told her I was done with us, that I didn't want to see her again, that I'd contact a lawyer and we'd start divorce proceedings as soon as possible. She started yelling that I was being irrational, that everyone makes mistakes. Was I perfect? And that's when I finally exploded and yelled back that, no, I wasn't perfect, but I'd never been unfaithful to her, never lied to her for 8 straight months, never betrayed the trust she'd placed in me. I got up and went to the room to pack some things. She followed me, still crying and begging. I filled a suitcase with clothes and basic things, grabbed my laptop and some important documents, and told her I was going to stay at Austin's house, my friend from work, for a while, until I figured everything out. Kimberly tried to block the door, saying I couldn't leave like this, that we needed to resolve this now. I just moved her aside, not violently but firmly, and left the house. The last thing I heard was her voice saying my name over and over while I walked to my car. Austin and his wife received me without asking questions, just told me I could stay as long as I needed. I told them the basics, and both were shocked, because they'd always thought Kimberly and I had a good marriage. I guess we all thought that. The next few days were horrible. Kimberly called me and sent me messages constantly. Hundreds of messages saying she was sorry, that she loved me, that please talk to her. I read them but didn't respond. I finally blocked her number on all platforms because I couldn't keep seeing her messages. I blocked her social media too, because I knew if I kept looking at them, I'd only hurt myself. When I blocked everything, Kimberly started contacting our mutual friends and my family. She sent a long message to my mom, explaining her version of the story and asking her to convince me to talk to her. My mom called me and asked what had happened. I told her everything, and she said she supported whatever decision I made, that she wasn't going to pressure me to forgive something like that. Some friends tried to be neutral and suggest therapy, but most understood my position. I lost like 3 or 4 friends in the process because they decided I was being too harsh or that I should give her a second chance. Well, screw them, honestly. Rebecca, Kimberly's older sister, called me a week later trying to mediate. She told me Kimberly was devastated, that she wasn't eating or sleeping, that it had been a terrible mistake, but people deserve second chances. I told her the same thing. I'd told everyone. No. That I respected that she wanted to support her sister, but my decision was made. Rebecca insisted, saying 10 years of marriage deserved at least a real conversation. and I responded that I'd had that conversation, and there was nothing more to say. She got frustrated with me and said I was selfish, that marriage was work and commitment. I told her yes, it was work and commitment, and that Kimberly had decided not to do that work when she got into another man's bed for 8 months. That shut her up. I hired a lawyer about 2 weeks after leaving the house. A divorce attorney Austin recommended, serious and efficient. I showed her all the evidence I'd collected, and she told me I had a solid case. We started the divorce process immediately. Since we didn't have kids and hadn't mixed our finances much, we always kept separate accounts, besides a joint one for house expenses. The process was going to be relatively simple. The house was the most complicated thing because we'd bought it together and both of us were on the deed. Kimberly received the divorce papers about a month after I left. My lawyer told me she'd contacted her asking to mediate, saying she wanted to try to save the marriage before proceeding with the divorce. My lawyer told her I wasn't interested in mediation and that we'd proceed with the legal process normally. Kimberly hired her own lawyer, and things got a bit complicated when they started fighting over small things, like who got which furniture and who had put more money into the house renovations. Honestly, I just wanted it to end quickly, so I gave in on many things just to speed up the process. During all this time, I focused on rebuilding my life. I went back to doing things I'd stopped doing during the marriage, like going out with friends more often, taking up hobbies again like playing guitar and hiking. I got more into my work, and they even offered me a better position that I accepted because, why not? I started going to the gym for real, not just as a pretext to escape the house, and I felt better physically and mentally. There were still hard days where I wondered what I'd done wrong or how I hadn't realized sooner, but over time, those days became less frequent. About 4 months after starting the divorce process, Kimberly called me from an unknown number. I answered without thinking, and she started talking fast before I could hang up. She told me we needed to talk about the house, that there was a couple interested in buying it and we needed to coordinate the sale. I told her all that could be handled through the lawyers. She said I was being ridiculous, that we could talk like adults about this without involving lawyers in every little thing. I responded that we were no longer adults who could talk normally, that we were two people in divorce proceedings and everything had to be official and documented. She got frustrated and started saying I hated her, that I'd never be able to forgive her. I told her I didn't hate her, I just didn't want her in my life anymore. That it was different. I hung up and blocked that number too. The house finally sold about 2 months later. It was faster than expected because the market was good at that time. We split the profit after paying off the remaining mortgage and each went our separate way. The divorce was officially finalized about 3 weeks ago. Almost 10 years of marriage reduced to a legal document that says we're no longer married. It's surreal when you think about it like that, right? A decade of your life with someone, and in the end, it's just paper. I haven't heard anything from Kimberly since then, and honestly, I prefer it stays that way. I don't know if she's still with Steven, or if that relationship also went to hell when it lost its excitement of being forbidden. I don't really care. I've thought a lot about everything that happened, about whether I could have done something different, about whether there were signs I ignored before that year. The truth is, maybe there were. Maybe our relationship was already deteriorating and I didn't want to see it. Or maybe Kimberly simply decided she wanted something different, and instead of talking to me about it, decided to go find it with someone else. What I do know is that I made the right decision to leave. Some people can forgive infidelity and rebuild their marriage, and I respect that, but I knew I couldn't. I couldn't look at her without seeing all those lies, without wondering if every time she went out she was really where she said she was, without feeling that betrayal in my chest. And I didn't want to live the rest of my life feeling that way. Now I'm in a small but nice apartment, close to Austin's work, so we see each other more often. I've been on some dates but nothing serious yet, and that's okay, I'm not in a hurry. I'm focused on myself for the first time in a long time, on understanding who I am without being in a relationship, on building the life I want without having to think about another person. It's liberating and terrifying at the same time. Sometimes I wonder if Kimberly thinks about everything she lost, if she really regrets it or if she was just scared of the consequences. I don't know, and I guess I'll never know. What I do know is that I deserved something better than 8 months of lies and betrayal, and that it's okay to have chosen my own peace of mind and dignity over trying to save something that was already broken. And that's enough for now.